Hey guys, it's Michelle, and I am back with my BookTubeAthon, read-a-thon wrap up. I had 7 books on my TBR for the read-a-thon, and I managed to get through all of those and put quite a hefty dent in the 2 books I had already started reading prior to BookTubeAthon. So quite proud of myself. Without meaning to, I kind of picked 7 books that weren't exactly on the happy side of life for BookTubeAthon. And so it was a little bit of a downer, but the fact that I was only getting to read a few hours a day helped me push through it, so no big deal. The first book that I ended up completing was The Invention of Hugo Cabret. And this book was given to me by a student teacher that I had earlier this year, in fact. And I loved this book. I loved that it included early filmmaking. I loved that the pictures kind of worked like a film. The writing was beautiful. It's a great book. It looks huge, but it really didn't take too long to get through it. It was really enjoyable. I thought the story was a great blend of things that just seemed wonderful and amazing, and hardship and sadness. And so I really enjoyed it. This completed a challenge for me, which was the book to movie adaptation. I also ended up watching the movie Hugo, directed by Martin Scorsese, and it was absolutely beautiful, and I'm so glad that I did. In fact, I'm going to start probably showing that every year towards the end of the year, maybe the day after standardized testing or something at school. Just thought it was just a brilliant movie. But I gave the book 4 out of 5 stars. If I had to use the same rating system to rate the movie, I would have given it 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it. Next, I read Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, and this completed 2 challenges for me. One, this is starting and finishing a series, and also both of these have red on the cover. I thought this is a Holocaust story where the Jews are portrayed as mice and the Nazis are portrayed as cats, and different groups are portrayed as different animals during the story. I thought the fact that the pictures were only black and white was a nice touch, and I couldn't figure out for a while why I thought that was so fitting, and later it hit me that it was because all of the footage that you ever see of the Holocaust is in black and white. And so I thought that was so appropriate for the book pictures to be black and white. They gave you extra information that wasn't in the words, but it wasn't enough that if you missed something in the drawings that you were going to miss a vital part of the story. So it really added to the story without being a distraction at all. And for those graphic novels, there really still were quite a few words on the pages, and it still did take quite a bit of time to read through them. And, you know, it's not the most uplifting of subjects. The first book, I was a little bit detached from everything that was happening, but the second book, oh, right to the heart, and just got to the real, just the terrible parts of the Holocaust, and really broke down the relationship between the father and the son who is writing the graphic novel. And I loved how the author also addressed things like, can I talk about dogs and cats when I'm using dogs and cats as kind of a meme in my story? He also addressed things like, is there room for one more Holocaust survivor story, and is that fair? Dealt with the things like the survival guilt and everything like that. I gave them both 4 stars. I thought they were excellent. Unfortunately, I can't take them to school because they did have content that's not appropriate for the 5th grade level, but both good stories, and I'm very glad that I read both of them. Next up was the challenge of reading something someone else picked for you, and I had put a group of, I think, 4 books in front of my husband, said, please pick one. Just knew he was going to pick Animal Farm, and he did not. He picked The Sign of the Beaver. I don't know why he didn't really explain. This story follows Matt, who is about 12 or 13 years old, and he and his father set out to settle some territory in Maine. They build a cabin, they start growing corn. It's really hard work. And then his dad leaves him there, and he knows he's going to be gone for about 7 weeks or so, and leaves Matt there to guard the cabin and have it ready for when the mom and sister and the new baby, whether it was a boy or a girl, come to live with them. And so Matt has to survive in this environment with no adult, and there are several, of course, obstacles that he has to overcome. And it was just a really intriguing survival story. I think the kids at school will love it. This book also fit the challenge of read something from a genre you haven't read much of this year. And for me, that's middle grade. And I should read more middle grade because I teach at that age, and it's a lot easier to inspire them to read a book if you have read it yourself. So I will definitely be using The Sign of the Beaver to hopefully encourage some of my reluctant readers to read a little bit more. It was a great story. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Next up was more graphic novel action, and that was Boxers and Saints. And basically the premise of this is there are 2 sides to every story, and this covers the Boxer Rebellion in China, which I basically knew nothing about. I did a little bit of research online before I read them, learned a few things, and then set into Boxers, which follows a young man who was on the Boxers side and was against the European culture coming into China. And I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read Saints, which followed a young Chinese girl who converted to Christianity during that same time period. And the stories did overlap. The 2 main characters do meet up during the series. But I really thought that there was an opportunity lost here. I really thought the story could have focused a lot more on the Chinese politics and why they went the way they did, and less on the kind of supernatural, paranormal, spirituality side of things. So I was a little disappointed, and I gave Saints 3 out of 5 stars. It's way too graphic for me to take to school, but I am glad to have learned a little bit about that period of Chinese history. Lastly, and these are not in chronological order either, I read A Monster Calls. It was inspired by Siobhan Dowd, but she died before she could get the story down, and she asked Patrick Ness to write it for her. The beginning of the book starts with him talking about what a delicate burden that was, and he knew he couldn't do her justice trying to write in her style, and so it is in his style. The pictures are by Jim Kay, and they were just hauntingly brilliant. I thought this was going to be a scary story from the cover. It's got a monster, it's all black and white, he's scary looking. But right before the BookTubeAthon, I realized from reading a little bit more on the cover that it's a sad story, and boy was it. I had ugly crying going on at the end. I'm glad you weren't there to see that. I'm glad I finished it in a morning instead of an evening, because I probably would have had trouble sleeping. It follows a young man whose mother has been diagnosed with cancer, and he's getting bullied at school, and he's just going through a lot, and this monster keeps visiting him in his dreams, and the story goes from there. And I just thought it was beautifully done. I thought the pictures really enhanced the story, and I absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So that was 7 books completed, which finished out all of the challenges for me for BookTube. And considering I had family in town, I thought that was terrific. I also managed to keep reading in Dune, which I was already reading when the read-a-thon began, and I pushed out 115 more pages of this, and I still have a little time left tonight to go. And these pages I'm proud of. Now those are some pages. Look at that. And they're all pretty much like that. You get a little space taken away from the little picture and a little quote at the beginning. But that's some pretty heavy reading for me. My Kindle pages usually don't have nearly that much material on them. I'm also in the middle of reading Ancillary Justice, and I managed to push out 115 pages from that book, and that story has really picked up. But I'll include those 2 in my July wrap-up video later on, so you'll know what I felt about those. And I'm not quite sure I'll finish Dune by the end of July, but I'm going to try, because one of my Goodreads groups is trying to finish it by July. Thanks for watching my BookTubeAthon wrap-up. My overall page count at this moment is 1,918 pages. Of course, a lot of those are graphic novel pages, and so don't necessarily hold as much weight as others, but I'm going to try by the end of the evening to pump out 82 more pages to bring it to 2,000. I just think that'd be awesome. I'm not going to cry if I don't hit it, but BookTubeAthon was amazing. Thanks to all of the hosts and Ariel for putting this together. It's a phenomenal celebration of reading, and I love it. Thanks so much for watching.